this morning with the Scottish Business Resilience Centre. My name is Jude McCurry. I'm the CEO for SBRC, and I'm joined today by Keith McDevitt from Scottish Government, and also Declan Doyle, who's head of our ethical hacking and is project managing this project for Exercise in a Box all around Scotland. We were delighted that we won the tender to deliver the Exercise in a Box sessions, and we had to take a decision to basically take them and put them online rather than in person because of COVID. And so far they've worked out really well. And the reason I want to do these taster sessions is because we want to make sure that you understand what you guys are signing up to, and also the benefit for your organizations around doing and making sure that you are more cyber resilient. So I will pass over to Keith McDevitt from Scottish Government.
Thanks, Jude, and good morning, everybody. So from a government's point of view, we are obviously very aware that digital is a place for organisations to be if they really want to expand their operations in this interconnected world. It really does make sense. But it's a sad reality that it's now just another environment in which criminals can also operate as they do in the real world. But the difference is they can operate much more effectively online and can spread that harm greatly. So they no longer need to travel region to region or country to country. They can do it from sitting at home. And it can have some fairly devastating effects on organisations. So I think there are many things that we can do to prepare for and to ensure that this piece of business risk, because that's what it is in place, whether you're a small business or a large business. There are things that you can do that don't cost a lot of money to essentially deal with about 80% of these cyber threats. But every now and then, as we've just seen over Christmas with the Scottish Environment Protection Agency, sometimes they get through, and when they get through, in some occasions, that can be fairly devastating, as it has been for one of our public sector bodies. And it's only at that stage that you really realise the type of impact that a cyber attack can have on an organisation, completely disrupting business. So the best you can do is really plan for that and run through some of these scenarios to get you thinking about what's our organisational response, and that's whether you're a 2 or 3 man outfit or whether you're a big enterprise organisation. The same thinking principles are the same. So this is why we got behind the National Cybersecurity Centre's excellent product, Exercise in a Box, because it does just that in layman's terms, and you'll hear that from the taster session. It takes you through a bunch of commonly known scenarios, and some of these can be the very devastating ones that we've just spoken about, to allow you to understand what the impact might be in your organisation in non-techie terms, because that's the bottom line is when these things attack you, it's not the technical aspect, that's one part of it, it's the disruption on business, it's the impact on staff, it's the impact on clients. So this is a really excellent way of getting to understand what the problems are, and more importantly, once you've gone through that, you actually get to understand what you can probably do about it in quite a structured way. And that's why we've funded a piece of work for, in this instance, the Scottish Business Resilience Centre. We're glad they've got the contract to really engage with the public, private and third sectors across Scotland, and to try and introduce them to this excellent tool, which you guys can then take on yourselves and actually just build that resilience into your organisation, thus limiting that potential damage, or at least when it comes and it happens, at least you've got an idea about what you should be doing about it, and you'll be able to reach out to the solutions that are there, and it'll be less painful for you in the long run. It's just a reality, but so is planning. And you plan for fires, you plan for IT outages. Let's just plan for the cyber attack, and you'll be in a fairly good place. And I think that's all I wanted to say. I think you'll find this useful, and if you go on and take the offer up of getting involved in one of the other sessions, you'll find some real value to the organisation. Just by going through this, you'll be better placed to protect your organisation and respond in a much more effective way than you might have if you hadn't. So it's all free, it's all good, and I think that's all I've got to say, and I'll hand you back across to, I think it'll be Declan now.
Thanks very much, Keith. Well, I appreciate that everyone is probably a wee bit webinared out at this point, given that we're almost a year into a pandemic, and it definitely feels a lot longer than that. And so I'll try and be brief, but I do want to talk to you all today about Exercise in the Box and what it is about, and try and convey the just how valuable a tool it actually is, because that is something that we have noticed as an organisation, is that is the message that people really need to hear, and it is the thing that people tell us after they've done an Exercise in the Box, is they'll come along not really sure what to expect, and then they'll leave and be like, that was just so valuable in terms of the discussion and the information that we got, and even just knowing where then to go. That is in essence what Exercise in the Box can do for your organisation, is show you the next step, because often you hear so much about cyber in the news. It's drowning with news on latest vulnerabilities or hacks or incidents, breaches, all that. You know, it can be difficult to point yourself in a direction, and that is what Exercise in the Box aims to do. So as Keith alluded to, it was developed by the National Cybersecurity Centre, which is kind of the UK's technical authority on everything cybersecurity. They publish a huge amount of resources, all freely available to use, and to look at everything from your personal life up to board level, even very niche sectors. You know, there's the most recent guide is one for farmers. So, you know, they have just about every aspect covered and every industry covered. So they created this tool, and it is a back to basics, pen and paper style discussion exercise where you're meant to sit down. You know, I've heard some people in the NCSC describe it as like a brown bag exercise, you know, with the traditional, you know, brown bag lunches. You sit down and chat about cybersecurity, aimed at everyone in an organization, from the heads and the execs all the way down to, you know, your HR departments, IT, whatever. It's not just for techies, it's for absolutely everyone. So when we won the tender for the Exercise in the Box project, we had the intent of delivering Exercise in the Box the way it was meant to be, which was obviously in person and around the table and having a discussion. But obviously that has not happened. As you can see, we're still talking to you through a virtual call. You know, the pandemic has unfortunately not gone anywhere just yet. And we have high hopes that hopefully by the end of this year, it will be in a much more favourable position. But for the time being, it's still talking to your webcam, as fun as that is. So we've adapted the tool ever so slightly to work in a virtual environment. So we run sessions where we get organisations together. We have really kind of no cap on the amount of organisations that get together. We don't like to restrict things. Obviously, if there was a session subscribed over like 100 people, we'd probably cut that down. But for the meantime, the sessions are open to everyone that wants to come along to them. We go through a wee bit of background on Exercise in the Box, like I'm doing just now, and then we explain how it will work, which I'll do that shortly. But in essence, it works as well as it would in person with the tweaks that we've done. We make use of breakout rooms so that you can go off and have kind of more private conversations within your own organisation. And then we also make use of the fact that we do have multiple organisations involved in, so we can do a bit of group learning and discussion. And I'll maybe touch on a few of the points that have been raised in those discussions, because they have been really valuable. So we use both Zoom and Microsoft Teams now. So we run a variety of those sessions throughout each month. You can find them on our website and on our Eventbrite page. You can just Google SBRC Eventbrite and you'll see all the listings there. You can just kind of pick your personal preference, whether that be Zoom or Teams. It does not take away from the experience regardless of what platform you're on. Just an ever so slight difference in how it's managed. So it's really just down to what you would prefer. Yeah, then we all get together, we do the exercise, and we split off into our breakout rooms and then come back and do a group discussion. For those wondering what kind of questions or discussions you might be having, an example I could give would be a scenario. We read out a scenario, so it would be something like you have just had an email or a call from one of the members of your organisation, and they say that they have received an email from what looked like to be your IT department, with a link saying, please click here and type in your username and password to retain access to your account. If you don't do this urgently, you'll lose access. So the employee has done that, and then they've realized that perhaps that was maybe not the right thing to do. Maybe that was a phishing email, and what do they do going forward? So that's the scenario. And then you go off into your breakout room and you have a little discussion on that scenario. So what would you do in that instance? Do you have someone to go to if you have a phishing email? Do you have protections in place to warn you? Various things like that. That's just an example. We use the working from home scenario, which is a nice round robin exercise. You know, it details various aspects of cybersecurity and potential vulnerabilities surrounding working from home, because obviously that is a very new thing for a lot of us, and there are a lot of things that have been overlooked by a lot of organizations, and that attempts to highlight it. So it covers different aspects, from what tools are you using, how are you collaborating, how are you sharing documents, sharing various other things, how are you responding to potential incidents, you know, do you have people to go to, things like that. So it's a really good way to kind of get you thinking about things that perhaps you've not had the opportunity to think about so far, given that, you know, most people's focus is just keeping an organization running through the pandemic, and cybersecurity is probably taking a bit of a back foot in terms of what you are thinking about. And as we've seen, unfortunately, the hackers and the bad guys out there are well aware of this, and they are loving it, and they are just capitalizing on the fact that there is chaos, there's uncertainty, you know, people are struggling, they love that kind of thing, unfortunately. So that's what they're doing. I did say I would mention a few things about the discussion sessions we've had, just to highlight some of the points that that we've seen through Exercise in the Box, and this should hopefully just show you how valuable these sessions can be. So a big thing that comes up in almost every session is your cybersecurity policies, you know, your password policy, your email policy, things like that, because a lot of people will say that they're not actually sure or not 100% sure. And there was one instance that kind of summed up how people view these policies, in that there was an organization where only one person in the organization could tell us their password policy and various things like that, because they had joined the week before. And that is because in the company handbook or whatever, you get all these policies, you get to read them, but then once you've read them, you never look at them again. And so there was people there who had been at the organization for 5+ years who would have read them back when they first joined the organization, but then never seen them again. And that's the kind of thing that we like to highlight is, you know, you should be routinely reminding people, not in an aggressive way, but just a gentle reminder that there are policies in place, and reminding organizations that just because they've created a policy, if they're not enforcing it, then it doesn't make a difference. You know, a policy isn't there to tick a box, it's there to protect you. And that is what Exercise in the Box can highlight. Another thing, particularly relating to the working from home environment, is if you work with a lot of sensitive documents in a real world way, not just digitally, so you've been printing them or sending them through the post or things like that, when it comes time to dispose of those documents, usually in an office you'll have a bin that you can put paper in, and then that bin will be taken and shredded at some point. Have you got that in place at home? If you're anything like me, no, you don't. You don't have a shredder in your house. Why would you? Most people don't. And so are you aware that you could be putting sensitive documents in the recycling bin that could have information on them that could be valuable to a hacker? And not that I'm speaking from experience here, but I do know that hackers will go through bins if they need to. So just be aware that, you know, they will use any means they can to get information. And so bin raking is definitely within scope for a lot of them. So just be aware of that. We've also had fantastic testimonials from various other organizations, just highlighting how valuable they've seen Exercise in the Box and how they've seen the discussions. So we would really encourage you to come along and just see what it's about. You know, we've seen that people have gotten so much use out of it. And we also run follow-up sessions after Exercise in the Box. So if you attend a session you then also qualify to book an hour slot with one of our facilitators who are made up of an ethical hacking team at SBRC. And what we will do is walk you through the other scenarios on Exercise in the Box. So there's 12 in total, so a huge different variety of content there. And we'll show you how you can then run the sessions in your own organization, so you can really double down on the cybersecurity. And once you've taken those first steps, you know where to go. We'll also signpost to all the different organizations out there in Scotland and the wider UK, just to show that a lot of people think that cybersecurity is an expensive thing to manage, but in reality, there's so much you can be doing that is freely available, and that doesn't require a whole lot of effort other than just time to stop and think about it and have a discussion. So Exercise in the Box is a really good way to do that. And as I say, they are both on Zoom and Teams. And very finally, just want to highlight the fact that if you are an organization that perhaps is a membership organization or has a lot of clients to deal with, we are also offering you the opportunity to then bring Exercise in the Box to your members or to your clients or supply chain. Get in contact with us at SBRC, and we will host a session for you where you can get in your own folks to get them through Exercise in the Box. So it's something you can offer, and we've partnered with various organisations around Scotland to do that so far. So it's a really valuable thing that you can then go off and offer. I would encourage you to come along yourself to one first, just so you know what it's about and you know how valuable it is. But that is pretty much everything I wanted to talk to you all about today, about Exercise in the Box. If you do have any questions at all, please get in contact with us at SBRC. We have a specific Exercise in the Box email, which is eib@sbrcentre.co.uk, or you can just get in contact through inquiries@sbrcentre.co.uk. That's it from me, so I'll pass back to Jude, I think.
I'll come off mute. So Declan, the dates and everything are on the SBRC website to book into the sessions coming up.
Yeah, as I say, you can go to the SBRC website and it's under Prevent and Protect, and then under Cyber, you can find our Eventbrite, or you can just Google SBRC Eventbrite and it'll take you directly to that page. And that you'll see the dates for the upcoming sessions. They also highlight which ones are on Teams, which are on Zoom, and then there's a few steps after you've subscribed to that, but it's all on the page there.
And the good thing about the sessions that I found, we did it as a taste or a test probably in the beginning was, and I thought this is going to be very, very technical, but we all did it as an organization and it wasn't very technical. And what it did drill home to us was that cyber, has to be looked after by all different members in the organization, not just the technical team. And I do like that analogy around the brown bag lunch session, because the session does include so it'll be 7 organizations, and
we're now just opening that up to as many as want to come along.
Okay, and then you can bring up to 5 people per organization, and then what we would encourage you to do is you can repeat the session with ourselves, or you do a train the trainer session. We can make the contents of the exercise available to yourselves. It is available via NCSC as well, and you can repeat that into your own organizations. It's an hour and a half of your time and your colleagues' times, which listening to Keith as well around SEPA and all the different stories that we hear via our instant response line. This is hugely valuable to spend this hour and a half as an organization to make sure that you're ticking all the boxes and you're doing everything that you can do to protect yourselves against any of these hacks. Looking at the SEPA one, that took place at a minute past midnight on Christmas Eve, when people, rightly so, should be sitting and relaxing in their houses after the tough year that we've had. These people are unscrupulous. They are criminals. They're not just, hackers is a nice way to call them, to speak about them. And they are working around what the vulnerable areas are in organizations, and they're looking at, and also even things like fraud that we're dealing with as well. And the instant response line, they're looking at when the banks aren't, when they're busy taking calls and stuff, and they'll basically pounce on on the companies and individuals on when they're not going to get that support from the banks around a fraud call. So please make sure that you know, everybody in your organization is going through some sort of cyber training in the next few months. And the one positive from the SEPA thing that I can take out of it is a lot of these organizations go through these ransomware attacks and they don't speak about it because of reputational damage. And then people think that these kind of attacks don't exist in Scotland. They do, and a lot of them get brushed under the carpet. So the one thing about SEPA is there's learning exercises from us all, and they're not afraid to speak about it. And they're working with the likes of Police Scotland and NCSC, so they are not going to fuel this organised crime and ensure that these kind of hacks can help, can work, because the more people that pay the ransomware, the more these kind of attacks happen, and Scotland is not immune to it. So that's really all from me. Keith, you've got your hand up, so you want to say something as well.
Yeah, I was really just on that point. So ransomware is one of the scenarios that the exercise in a box runs through, and that's really worth pulling out as a specific threat, because over the last sort of 5 years, ransomware has evolved from a fairly random and aimed at, you know, generally some endpoints, quite a containable event, to the type of kind of cataclysmic event that we're now seeing more often. So organised crime have evolved at pace. Ransomware is the cash cow of digital crime. It's paying, and therefore they're putting all their efforts into making sure it pays well. And you know, in general terms, it's fairly random in its first approach, and that's because it's either coming in through a phishing email that, let's face it, anybody could be the victim of a phishing email. Some of them are pretty good now, or through the supply chain because of updates. And some of you may have followed the SolarWinds, where 180,000 organizations were compromised by one attack, and it wasn't intended for 180,000 organizations. And the problem is, I think as business owners now, you need to think about what would we do if our entire network was either deleted or encrypted. Do we have a plan around about that? Because it's no longer just the endpoints. We are now seeing more and more often that the criminals are making it worth their while. They're spending a bit of time in the networks. They're identifying the worth and value of the organization. And the last thing you know is, or the first thing you know is the last thing they do is they extract data to extort you. We'll call it ransomware, but let's give it its true label, it's extortion. And that's what they're going to use to leverage you to play ball. And I've just in the last sort of week, because of the SEPA and other incidents, we've been looking at some of the leak sites where day on day they are just listing the organizations, and they're not all enterprise organizations that they're listing. Some of them are small organizations who've just been caught. However, they're worth some effort. So you have to think about that context. It's a complete lottery just now whether you will be subject to a ransomware attack or not, and therefore every business has to have a plan around about it. You have to think about what the consequences are of you waking up one morning to find that you have no access to your network. And now in this virtual world where we're all working remotely, we're talking about how do we run a business when we have no network? What is your backup plan? And even now, and I know everybody will be saying, well, we'll just go revert to backups. They've thought of that. They are now actively thinking about how they compromise backups before they essentially deploy the payload. So this is an evolution of crime, but this is a really harmful one. And on any day can really take out an organization. So we need to think about what we're going to do in that instance, how we're going to operate and how we're going to return. And this exercise is very useful to get that thought process in place for your organization, because it'll be different for everybody depending on your size, scale, and where you are. But it's very, very useful to just talk through that kind of scenario. And that's, of course, just one of many scenarios that are there. But these are the common scenarios that organizations will face. And it is, I guess, you know, this lottery, it's no longer if, it is when. So you need to be prepared for it. And that's one of the reasons we're really getting behind this, because it will make a difference if you've got a plan and you at least know what to expect, because that's half the problem. And I think that's all I just wanted to say there.
Yeah, I would just like to highlight from what Keith said is that I studied at university on ethical hacking, and so I do know part of the course is trying to get you to think about what a hacker will think like. And a lot of people, correctly so, assume that hackers are want to go after big governments and huge organizations, like the NHS or whatever, causing the most chaos they can. That's absolutely correct. However, in order to do that, they need equipment, they need a place to live, they need their basic necessities any other person needs. How are they going to pay for that? Well, they're going to go after the easy targets, the low-hanging fruit, the easy pickings, which are the small businesses, the ones that don't have entire departments focusing on their cybersecurity or don't have the resources. And that is why things like Exercise in the Box are so important, is we need to bolster the resilience, the cyber resilience of these small organizations, so they're not going to be the ones that get the ransomware and then they end up paying the ransom, and that goes to fund directly onto bigger attacks like we've seen with the NHS a few years ago. So even if you're at home thinking, what's the realistic prospect of me being hacked, is actually high, because you're paying the rent basically for the big organizations to suffer as well. So it is about making sure that everyone is resilient to these type of attacks and knows just the danger of what can happen basically from these attacks.
And we had examples before Christmas with smaller organizations that didn't actually know that their data was out. So we've had calls from people like the Cyber Defence Alliance, with details for small Scottish organizations to say, some of our guys have found this information, then we have to try and contact the organizations and make it sound like this isn't something dodgy, that we're telling them that their data is out there. So you can be hacked and not know it. We've also had one as well before, a very, very large organization that was out, and we know that they their payroll was taken off before Christmas, and they had 2 days before to pay people for December. So things like that, they're thinking of how much pain can they cause an organization. There's a psychology behind it. These are not just pickpockets or anything like that. These are very bright criminals. There's a few questions come in here from Wendy. Hi, just looking on your site, I don't see it clear how you go to exercise for specific concerns such as ransomware.
So I'll just post in the link there for Exercise in the Box. What we're doing is we're doing the working from home scenario. So it does cover a part of ransomware as well, but it does also cover others. So that the kind of aim for us is to get you to come along to that and experience all the different aspects, and then in that follow-up session that I mentioned earlier, you can then specifically query one of the facilitators on the ransomware focused exercise, so that you can then go off and do that yourself. So it's about getting everyone in to do the kind of general Exercise in the Box session, working from home, different aspects, and then you can then decide where you want to go on after that, and you can do that at your own leisure rather than having to wait for us to kind of host a session.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, on you go, Jude.
I'm just saying, all of the exercising is important. It's not just the specific ransomware. So if you're looking at that general housekeeping of your organization, you're protecting yourself against things like ransomware. So don't focus too much and saying, I want to talk about ransomware, I want to talk about ransomware. You have to look at the basics, and you have to make sure that all your staff are signed up to things to do with cybersecurity.
Yeah, so really just to make it clear that the facilitated exercise that the SBRC will be doing is really just an introduction for you to be introduced to the tool. The tool is a complete toolkit designed for non-techies, designed for you to take and embrace and use and run within your organization. We're just giving you an introduction to that. And once you've seen it, you'll go, yeah, that's pretty easy. We could do that ourselves because it's designed for you to do yourselves. I mean, it's everything. There is nothing else you need. It tells you how many pencils you need to run the exercise. So it really does handhold you right through that. So the idea is we're hoping to introduce you to the Exercise in the Box toolkit through a facilitated exercise. You go, I get that, that's dead easy. Now we'll look at this in the round and work out what kind of exercises we want to run for our people. It's designed that way. So that's really what this is all about.
And also we have other aspects. So this is not the be all and end all to do with cybersecurity. There are other areas that we can work with. And we also have our trusted partner network. But also if anyone thought that they were being compromised or was any issues in their organizations, we do have an instant response telephone line as well, that the number's on the website as well for that. And call and you will get advice and support from the various agencies if anything does happen.
I've seen it. Oh, sorry.
It says, if an organization is hacked and data been lost, should the ICO be alerted as first action? Again, it depends on the specifics of the hacks. It is something that you'd have to speak to your board members and stuff like that as well to see what kind of data has been hacked and leaked. So that's a very hypothetical question, but yes, you should be aware that there could be circumstances you would have to alert the ICO.
What I would recommend in that instance is to actually call up the Cyber Incident Response hotline at SBRC, and our colleague at SBRC will be able to point you in the right direction and will highlight if there has been a significant data leak, not necessarily a data loss, but if there's a data leak or a breach, then perhaps the ICO is someone that should be alerted. I wouldn't necessarily say absolutely first port of call. The first port of call for you should be making sure that things are contained and making sure that your business can still operate. And our Cyber Incident Response hotline will help you with those first steps.
And I guess it's also a reality is it can be a challenge actually knowing what type of data has been taken. And that's particularly the case with the kind of new enterprise level ransomware where they do extract data. And it's not always clear to you what's gone. And that's your first priority is actually to work out, its containment, obviously. And obviously the legislation determines when you should engage the ICO. But I guess as soon as it's an early indicator when private personal data has gone, because there's a bunch of obligations attached to that. And the ICO is never going to give you a row for going too early, for sure. But you do really need to assess the scale, the size, the implications, and the ICO should be up there because it's a legal requirement. But as I say, it can be challenging, even when you know file names. If you know file names, it can be challenging knowing the content, and there are obligations round about the timescales when you start to notify about the type of data. So you really need to know the type of data that's gone. And again, there are playbooks involved that helps you understand that. And as Declan said, if you're a small organization, you're just not sure, that's the purpose of the incident response team being at SBRC, to give you that kind of expert guidance and give you practical advice on the kind of stuff that you want to do now. Because in the moment, it will just be really, really challenging. There are so many different things going to be going through your mind when you're the subject of an attack. It can be, that's why you need a plan. And in the exercises, you'll see it's all about, do you actually have a plan around about that? And the plans are out there. They're fairly generic. You should just have them and adapt them. And we publish some as well from government's point of view that you could adapt. I'm not saying they're ideal for small businesses, but they have all the principles of cyber incident response plan, and you can kind of trim them right down to kind of suit your needs.
There's a few more questions come in as well. So one on, does Exercise in the Box cover social media and various aspects like that? There is a few scenarios that do mention social media, and there is now a newly launched topic in general that covers social media and also a vulnerability disclosed to you through your social media. So if you run a website, what happens if your website is defaced and someone sends you a direct message on Twitter saying that? Or what happens if your social media account is taken over in general, or so dealing with all that aspect of cybersecurity, because it's not just about how your organization deals with it internally, it's also about the message you're projecting as well. You need to make sure that it's a public relations battle as well. You don't want to, as we've seen kind of 6 years or so ago with the TalkTalk incident, you don't want to jump on the TV and not really have a clue what you're talking about, and then just make more and more of an issue than it already is. So yeah, definitely exercises like that. Another one, are there more dates coming up For the future, yes, absolutely. We're working to publish the schedule for February and March as well. So that should be on our Eventbrite but probably by the end of this week as well. So just keep an eye on that. And again, that'll be a mix of Zoom and Teams, so you can just kind of pick your personal preference. And just a few more people talking about the email address. Yeah, we're aware that the actual acronym for Exercise in the Box is EIAB. The NCSC told us about that kind of after we'd set up our email. So the email for SBRC is eib@sbrcentre.co.uk, but you can just reach out to any of us under our links to our inquiries email address on our website. So any information you want, just go to the website as your first port of call. But I think that's us in terms of questions.
Yep, that's it. So get booking on, guys, and hope to see you on some of the sessions very soon.
And I would again just echo that if you do have a membership organisation or you have a large client base or something like that, please get in touch with us if you want to host an event for your members or clients. It's very little effort required on your end. You can use our Zoom or Teams. We have all the materials prepared. All we'd ask from you is really to push the message out, and then maybe a wee 5-minute introduction at the start of the session, and the rest can be handled by us.
And to be fair, if you're ever subject to a data breach, a cyber-related data breach, you might be able to say to the ICO, one of the things you did, in your planning, your preparation, is come on an Exercise in a Box course. It may help you a little.
Yeah, and also cyber insurance as well, to demonstrate that you're doing everything that you possibly can within your organization to protect yourselves as well.
It's all about the steps we take on the cyber journey.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody, and see you all again.
Hopefully see you in an Exercise in the Box session.
Bye.
Okay, thank you.
Bye, everyone.